like the content we bring you about the heavy metal world, please like, subscribe, and comment to help us grow the channel.
How's it going, everyone? This is Lana Teramae from Mangold Express Radio. Today, my special guest is the one, the only, James Christian from House of Lords. They're best known for their hits, I Want to Be Loved, Can't Find My Way Home, which is a Blind Faith cover, and Remember My Name. James is here to talk about House of Lords' latest album, Full Tilt Overdrive, so stick around for the full interview. First of all, Full Tilt Overdrive, congratulations on the new album.
Thank you.
Just curious, why that album title? How'd you guys come up with that?
The album title was written for the song Full Tilt Overdrive, which really is about a pinball machine, a woman being like a pinball machine, basically the two together. Speed being overdrive, and full tilt is something that people do, and they understand the term if they're someone that plays a pinball machine. I never played that much pinball, but I do know what it means. It's kind of working the machine to get it to do what you want. And overdrive just meaning a lot of speed.
And actually, my next question was, have you played any pinball machines? But you said you didn't really play much pinball growing up.
Yeah, but maybe a few here and there. And in the early days when I was playing clubs, there would be a pinball machine, but I was nowhere near being a master, at playing pinball. But my keyboard player came up with the title, and I kind of asked him because I wasn't sure exactly what it meant. I've heard Full Tilt before separately, but I never heard it with Full Tilt Overdrive. So putting the two together gave it the impression of, like I said, overdrive being excessive speed, and full tilt being what it is, and how you can manipulate the lyric to have something to do with a fast woman or a woman that you had spent time with. And just it opened up the doors to many possibilities for what your imaging of the song could be.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
So where are some standout tracks from the new album?
Well, Full Tilt would be one of them. Crowded Room would be one of them. There's Bad Karma, Castles High. I mean, I call all of these, there's one more song. I always keep forgetting the title because it was one of the last songs that we did. It's called Cry of the Wicked. And that's another song that really, I think will get a lot of attention. And the last one being Taking It All. So I've got quite a few favorite standouts here because I think 98% of the record is a standout.
That's always a plus when there's more than one track that really stands out to you. That just shows all the positives with this album. Like yeah.
For me, there were a lot. For me, there were a lot of positives. Yes.
Yeah, and it's good because I really appreciate when bands, especially bands that came from the 70s and 80s, when they're putting out such great music so late in their career. It just shows that they've grown as musicians, but they're also not trying to follow the nostalgia train. Because I don't know if you've seen what the current state is like, but there's a lot of classic rock bands that just seems to be stuck in a certain time period where they will only play the hits and songs that they're best known for, instead of really giving their current music or like songs from the post 2000s a chance, which is really sad.
Well, sometimes you can understand it as a musician and as when you're playing live, people tend to want to come to see the songs that made them a famous group. So I understand that part of it, but I can't understand not doing new records and playing that material as well. We've been writing music since the first 3 albums before the breakup. We've had 10 albums since. So really, we have never stopped writing and always putting new music out. We try to do something from every record that we release so that the whole show has a combination of each record. How you do that sometimes, and some people will always want to go back to the first three records. I understand it. It was a different period. It was the time when things were really happening. We had major videos, major tours, major budgets to do incredible records with great producers. So those times have changed, and I think it made a difference in how people want to hear their music now. They want to hear the older stuff. I'm sure when you go see Journey, you don't want to hear their last three records. For me, I'd rather see Journey singing all Steve Perry, but that's just me,
My dad is also a big Steve Perry fan. There are just some fans out there, and I totally respect them, but there are fans that, like you said, that they only want to hear the Steve Perry stuff. Yeah, it just is what it is.
It's what it is. Lou Gramm being another example. These were two people that I really admired a lot and still do. Lou Gramm, he was one of the greatest out there with one of the best bands of that era, which was Foreigner. Yet Foreigner continued on, and they did continue on with a very excellent replacement. An excellent. I mean, the guy covered the Foreigner material like it was him, but it wasn't him. So this is what you're up against. A lot of different changes have happened musically since the late 80s, early 90s.
Speaking of Lou Gramm, have you heard the latest Foreigner song they put out, Turning Back the Time? That one
No, I did not.
Oh, yeah, that one is in, apparently Lou Gramm sang it. I think it's from the 90s, 80s, something like that, but,
Yeah.
I kind of like it. It's basically, details, like, why they wanted to be musicians and kind of like turning back the time, their journey as a band. So I think it's worth checking out.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, they put it out because I believe Foreigner are going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, great. They should be.
Yeah, it's about time.
Really, absolutely.
What was the songwriting and recording process like for the new album?
The new album was basically the same as it's been for quite a few years, which is we each have our own studio. And a lot of times we work through the same type of process we're working now, which is through Zoom or through another media that will let us speak to each other, write together, and record together. Now, I don't mean at the same time, but listening to what Jimmy might do, or I'd be listening to what Mark might do. The only person we really didn't have any live interaction with was our drummer. He was from Sweden, and we couldn't hook that up. But we trusted him so much because we gave him the tracks that we did as demos, and sent that to him and said, this is the song, the feel. We're not asking you to play note for note. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that for a drummer. So he would hear the song, and then he would do his parts. And it always worked out fantastic. He always added a lot of momentum to what we had already written.
Coincidentally, my next question was for the current lineup, what everybody brings to the table. But you already kind of talked a little bit about Jimmy Bell. So what about the rest of the band?
Mark Mangold brings a great amount of momentum to the band as well. And also, it's been a shot of adrenaline having him on board, because the albums prior to that, I was doing a lot of the keyboards, and I'm really not a keyboard player, but I did enough so that it would have keyboards in the song. Whereas in the early records, which were first albums, Sahara and Demons Down, we had a real keyboard player with Greg Giuffria. So Mark Mangold has really taken that spot and that place. He comes up with incredible melodic keyboard parts. I love his B3 organ playing, and he has a lot of that on this album. So that, to me, makes the big difference in the sound of House of Lords on the last two records as opposed to the earlier records.
You brought up Greg Gifria. Obviously, keyboards was a big part of the House of Lords sound. Do you think that Mark, he kind of like reignited the band in any way? Like
yeah. Yes, absolutely. He has Mark and Michael Bolton worked together a lot in the early years. Now, I know Michael Bolton from Connecticut. We grew up in the same state. We played the same clubs. We were on the same night sometimes. So, but I never met Mark Mangold. Mark Mangold was working with other bands, Drive, She Said, a few other bands that I wasn't really familiar with, but I knew that he worked with Michael Bolton on a few records together. So the history goes back pretty far. But we didn't hook up together until my friend Fiona Flanagan said, you should work with Mark Mangold because he would fit perfectly with the band. And her being a musician, she was absolutely correct. As soon as we started working together, we couldn't stop writing. We were just, putting it out. And Jimmy Bell giving us the tracks, because a lot of the tracks that we do, or most of the tracks, are coming from Jimmy Bell. That's what his forte is. Everybody has a job to do in the band. And when you put it all together, it really, you put out some really great music.
Yeah, for sure. And I had a chance to listen to the album. And one of the tracks that really, like, wow, that kind of shocked me in a good way, was Not the Enemy. Did Mark come up with that, or was I?
Yes.
Did I get that wrong?
Yes. And he came up with that, and I had my reservations from the first time I heard it. Not that I didn't think it was a great song, but I thought that it was a little bit more progressive sounding in the forward. It had more of a death metal riff, if you would, with the guitars being way tuned down. Like I think instead of a D, it was a low E, which makes the guitar sound very dark and very Metallica sounding, I guess you would say. But when I heard it a few more times, I said, if I can get my voice to work on this song, it's going to be a really great and interesting track. And it really was. Mark put together a very interesting track, and then Jimmy Bell put some parts on it that really just took it over the top very lightly. So you really there's not really a guitar solo in there, but there is with Mark Mangold in kind of a duet type thing.
It's like a mix of, it's kind of modern, but it also definitely has that old school vibe. Strangely enough, I think that would be like good for like a heavy metal rave, if that makes sense. Not just with the beat.
Yeah, everybody has their comments and opinions on it. Some people at first thought it might be political. I am not the enemy, but it really was more of a man, woman, woman, man type of song where two people speaking to each other and fighting and not getting along, and the other one saying, listen, I've done all this for you, I've been here for you, through thick and thin, I'm not the enemy. And I love that because it took a title that said one thing, but when you listen to the song, it said something completely different.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't really think of it as a political song, but it's always interesting to read about how people interpret songs.
Yes.
Because we all have our own opinions, so we're allowed to feel what we feel, but it's just really interesting how some people, they have similar opinions, but there's also like really drastic different opinions as well. I think
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I stopped you.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that, and with Not the Enemy is a perfect example of that. But what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that's the beauty of writing lyrics and having an idea, and then hold on 1 second. I just lost my my headphone. That's the beauty of having an idea, and then presenting it to when your song is done, and people listen to it and they come up with a whole different concept of what it's about. Even though you had one idea when you were writing it, they had another idea as a listener. And that's okay, because it should be that way. I mean, there are some lyrics that are simply obvious. They write and they sing exactly the same way, so you know what it is. But when you start getting into other ways of interpreting your lyric, writing it a little bit more colorful, you open up the ideas right there. People can interpret it different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
I don't know. Have you? I don't know if you're a Rush fan. Have you read Geddy Lee's book?
No, I was
Um,
never, I was never really a Rush fan, and it's funny because um, I met Eric Lifeson at a tennis tournament
I was like,
for it's Lifeson, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
just wanted to make sure I had the right name. And I met him at a tennis tournament for John McEnroe. I attended it and I played it. And that night, John McEnroe, Lifeson, myself, and one other person were doing a jam session. We did "Can't Find My Way Home" as one of the songs that I sang, and a few other things. But I never was really like the Rush fan. I maybe heard a few songs that I remembered. I couldn't even tell you the title. My bands were Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, um, bands like that. That really they were just perfect for what I wanted to listen to. And I was kind of like I had tunnel vision during those years because there was so much great music coming out of Led Zeppelin then, and I learned a lot of how I wanted to sing in the future. I mean, I thought I had my own voice until I started listening to Led Zeppelin and Robert Plant. So I don't think I sound like him now, and I don't try to, but I do love his phrasing, and I also love the way he can make something happen out of nothing. It'll just be a moment, and when you go, "Whoa, that was a nice moment," and what you just did there is perfect, and that's what I like to, in the way he treats his vocals.
Speaking of vocals, your new album, your vocals on the new album, Full Tilt Overdrive, um,
Mhm.
obviously it's not what sounded. Obviously, your voice is not what it sounded like in the '80s, but it's really good.
Mhm.
How do you?
Well, thank you.
Yeah. How do you keep your voice in shape after all these years?
Well, it's not as easy as it was, and when we were doing the first three records, man, I could be partying all night and wake up at 12 in the afternoon and have a gig at 3 and be ready to go. When you're young, your body doesn't really react to anything. And the older you get, the older you get, it reacts to everything. So you wake up in the morning and you really have to go through a process to get it so it actually works for you. And you have to be accepted to the fact that it might not do exactly what you could do, and a heartbeat, and you have to think things through a little bit more. When I do a vocal, I already know in my head where I'm going with it. I already know what I'm going to sing, so I'm not experimenting on the mic. I'm singing what I've thought the song through, and I listen to the song without vocals for for hours until I know in my head what's going to work. So when I walk to the mic, I'm usually only doing 4 or 5 takes and then fixing up what are the best of those 5 takes.
In a similar direction, was it a difficult transition learning to sing with your current voice? Because I know it's more raspier now compared to.
Yeah. Well, before, in the earlier days, again, I have to go back years, the rasp was there, but I could push it in there if I wanted to. In other words, I could use it where I needed it and take it away when I didn't. And today, it's there no matter what I do. If I sing low or if I sing high, it's part of my voice. So I don't mind it. It's different. I got used to it. So it is what it is. I think there are times I would like things to be completely pure, but you could be sitting there for hours and still not get what you're looking for. So I know what I'm looking for, and I know what I'll get. when I do it.
I think the rasp kind of gives you an edge, which I really like.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So rock music obviously isn't as popular as what it used to be. And you really have to look hard just to find great music nowadays. Are there any current modern bands that you're listening to at the moment, like post 2000s?
Greta Van Fleet, I listen to for many reasons, and it goes back to my love of Led Zeppelin. Um, I've listened to quite a few of their songs, and I love the music. I don't think the songs are as great as Led Zeppelin did, but believe me, the energy and the attitude of that band is fabulous. I really, really do like listening to that group. There are very few other bands that I really listen to because whatever my daughter might bring home, but she's into a whole different thing. I mean, we're talking generations against generations. I work with her in the studio and she doesn't get what I do. And sometimes I don't get what she does, but that's, that's part of growing up with music in your own genre. Music today in 2024, it's trying so many things. I don't know if it's really found what it's going to do, but I mean, there's some great bands out there, but I don't know of any brand new bands that I could think of that are really, tearing it up.
I think I agree with what you. I mean, the current state of the music industry it's definitely leaning more towards pop, but I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah.
About how these artists are trying new things, but they're really unsure of what they want.
Right.
Yeah, and I think. I'm sorry.
Go
What?
ahead. I was just gonna say it was never, when certain bands come out and you hear them, you go, oh, that's amazing, and you're immediately a fan. And I haven't really had. I guess this is going to sound weird, but when I've heard some of the early stuff that Kelly Clarkson did, and she really blew me away as a singer. And Since You've Been Gone was a song that she did, and I said, wow. I mean, anybody could have done that song because it's just beginning to end a perfect song. But no bands really just like, you wanted to start following. I love all the older stuff. If Todd Rundgren is playing in town, I'm going to go see him, even though his shows are almost nothing to do with what he used to do because he's doing a lot of actual covers along with some of his stuff. But older bands, when they come into town, I'm there to see it.
Yeah, I mean, can't really blame someone for like loving the music that they grew up with. I mean, it's just
Sure.
it's kind of like in our DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with One Direction. And I'm not a huge fan of them anymore, but I still dig the songs that I grew up with. So it's totally normal.
Yes, and there's not a lot of new bands that are heavy rock bands per se that I know of. I mean, they're probably out there in the universe playing somewhere, but they might not be signed yet. As far as frontier bands, I know most of them. The ones that I like. Frontiers puts out a lot of the melodic rock bands from the 80s and 90s, but they've also signed some young acts that are doing the same thing, but they still sound a little bit more 80s and 90s.
Frontiers has just been putting out stuff. Like they're very busy.
Super busy. And that they're a godsend because bands like House of Lords or other bands in my genre would have nowhere to go to have their people hear our music because Frontiers has made it their niche. And that's all they do, with the exception of maybe a few things here and there. But that's their forte. So it works for us too.
Yeah. Speaking of your genre, obviously it depends on where you play and what shows you're doing. But how do you guys pick out your set list? How many deep cuts do you draw in, and how many hits do you draw in?
We always do Can't Find My Way Home. We always do certain songs that were radio airplay. I Want to Be Loved, Can't Find My Way Home, Remember My Name. Now I'm going back to the first three records. because back then you had radio promoters, you had everything go in your favor to make a successful introduction to the marketplace. Without radio back in those years, you wouldn't really have anything. You had to have radio on your side. So and live performances. We were touring with the likes of Cheap Trick for almost a year. Ozzy Osbourne, we did a few shows in Europe. Scorpions for a while. The Nelson Brothers, I can't remember the Nelson Brothers, which were complete different. We were A and B on the scale, but that tour was so successful. I don't know why, because they were more of a pop rock band and we were more of a heavy band. But it went over every night. It was just a great tour. And Tesla and Queensryche. I'm just trying to think of the bands we played with during the first 3 records. So there were a lot of tours that we had and a lot of opportunities to get out there. And a little bit more difficult with, since the new formation, because there's less places to perform at. But, we'll go to Europe and we'll do some club dates there. And sometimes we're there for a month, sometimes a month and a half. And just, playing to as many fans as we possibly can. And it's usually very successful as well.
Do you have any standout tours do you have a favorite tour that really stands out to you the most?
The European tour we did with Scorpions, because it was the very first one that we had after the first record, and it was Gene Simmons was responsible for it, and he knew the guys in Scorpions, played some stuff, and they agreed to take pretty much a unknown band at that time, and we opened up for them, and it was fantastic for us. We played everywhere from England, Edinburgh. It was night after night. It was a very long tour. The guys and the Scorpions were absolutely wonderful to us. And so I remember that whole tour. I remember Regensburg, Germany, where it started, being an old town with cobblestone streets, and thought, wow, this is so different. And yet they had a big, I wouldn't say arena, but it was a room that could hold 10,000 people. So it was pretty crazy.
The good old days.
Yes, the good old days.
You've been in the music industry for a very long time. What's the one lesson you've learned that still holds dear and that you still find important and that still stands out to you?
The one what? Sorry, I had.
What's one lesson you've learned from the music industry that still stands out to you?
The one lesson is to take care of yourself, and I learned that lesson when we did an Ozzy Osbourne show, and the night before partied as hard as I possibly could, and woke up the next morning pretty much not feeling well. I had a hangover, but I had something else, some sort of flu going on. So, and I remember my manager telling me, "You have to take care of yourself. You're not invincible. This kind of stuff can happen." And this was an important show. And I also remember them bringing in a doctor, and that doctor giving me an injection. I don't know what the injection was, but I went from being lethargic to energetic. And that sounds like an adrenaline to me, but I don't know what it was. But I was up for the show for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it was. And then after the show, I was out again. So whatever it was, it got me through the show, but it also taught me a lesson. Take care of your body a little bit more. Everyone wants to have a good time and party. And, I didn't want to lose a moment of that tour. I wanted to just savor it all. After all the years I spent playing in clubs and finally getting this opportunity to be out on the major tours, I guess I overdid it a little bit. So.
Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. Because definitely when you're young, you seem to think that you're invincible, and then, I guess you have to hit rock bottom or like something so drastic for you to realize, oh wait, no, I actually do have to take care of myself. There are things that I actually have to look out for.
Absolutely. You have to take care of yourself. I learned after that. I paced myself. Prior to that, I wasn't pacing myself, but my body was letting me do it. Finally, it gave me a warning sign that that night, the day I woke up from the night before, that was a warning sign that you've overloaded. So I guess everybody has to go through that first, and then they go, okay, time to take things seriously.
Yeah, I totally agree. Real quickly, we have about 8 minutes left. What's next for House of Lords?
What's next for House of Lords? Planning our tour, planning 2025, and promoting the new record, Full Tilt Overdrive. Doing some work in the States. I'm pretty sure casinos are going to be the first place we start to do some shows, because it's a lot easier to get your audiences into a place like that. We did a few casinos in Connecticut, Mohegan Sun, with House of Lords, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was very successful. There were fans from out of state coming in because it was drivable. It could have been Pennsylvania, it could have been New York City. So we'll probably do a lot of those. And any festivals that come around, we're going to make ourselves available for them, where we didn't in the past.
Well, that's definitely something to look forward to. I mean, because the new album is incredible, and it'd be really great to see you guys live and actually, and because the studio version is one thing, but it really takes it to another level when you hear these songs live.
Oh yeah, that's totally a different feeling to see it being done live. Where do you live, Lana? Which city?
I live in Hawaii, actually.
Hawaii. Oh, you're lucky. Only been there once. So for you to see a show would be a little bit different. You'd have to come over to the mainland.
Yeah, definitely. That goes with the changing times. Not to go to like a little rant, but definitely, Hawaii doesn't really appreciate rock music anymore. I mean, there's probably like little clubs and festivals that I'm not aware of, but as far as like the big rock acts go, we haven't really gotten a lot of that in recent years. But yeah. But anyways, thank you for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Lana. It was a lot of fun.
If you like the content we bring you about the heavy metal world, please like, subscribe, and comment to help us grow the channel.